Hello everyone, welcome back. I hope everybody's doing fine. I hope you're all healthy. I hope you're getting ready to go into phase 1 of eliminating the quarantine. Yay!
If they live in Florida.
Oh yeah, if you live in Florida. Good call, Mink. I've had a lot of people ask me about what it was like for me to get a job being a police officer. That was a long time ago. And I'd like to give some tips on what it would be like now, but I don't know what it would be like now. I was on the job 25 years and came down to Florida, which I guess you're supposed to do when you retire, right, Mink?
Right on.
Yeah. So I don't know. There's so many different departments, so many different ways that hiring practices are gone through. So I'll tell you about what it was like for me when I got hired. I took the test in 1991. I know that was forever. The 90s, the 19s, oh my gosh. So I found out that there was a test and went and got the application. Now it's important when you get your application to know that, at least when I did, I had to pay a fee for the application, and then it was time stamped and dated when you turned it in. So the idea was get the application, fill it out, which you have to be complete. Once I filled it out, I went back to the police department, submitted it, they time stamped it. I don't know if I had to pay the fee then or when I picked it up. But then I was notified of when the test date was, the time of the test, and where it was going to be held. I was also given a study guide. I was fortunate at the time. I was working for a government facility doing uniform security, and there was about 5 of us that were interested in taking the test. So we submitted the applications, we got our study guides, and we went and met several times before the test and went through the study guides as a group. And we went to the test together, we took the test. Once you take the test, get away from the test area, go out somewhere outside, wait for, in my case it was 4 other people. We ended up going to a restaurant, sat down, and we all took notes. What questions stumped you? What questions do you remember? And then we went over how we answered those questions. If all 5 of us came up with the same answer, that's pretty much what we wrote down for the answer and for our notes. And then we were able to ask or look up and make sure, yes, that's the right answer or wrong answer, and we were able to compare. Because before I got hired, I took probably about 5, maybe 6 tests. And it's nice going into the test that you kind of have an idea of what they're going to be looking for. Now, when I took the test, there was several different types of tests that were being offered. Case Western Reserve University in Cleveland had a test that they provided. There was a McCann test, which I think is an independent company out of, I think, Pennsylvania. There was several different types of tests. You might come across some that have a crime scene picture, a drawing. You study that for 10-15 minutes, and then they ask you, 50 questions on what you observed by looking at that picture. Another test was if a flagpole gives off a shadow of X amount of feet at 11 o'clock, how long or short is the shadow of the same flagpole at 4 o'clock? Why is the sky blue? How much of the earth is covered with water? It didn't really have to do much with police work, but that was the type of test that those departments gave. Some of it was look at a series of photos of suspects and read about different crimes. And then they would ask you questions about the suspects and ask you questions about the crimes. Usually you'll get a study guide, and like I did, it was easier for me to sit down with a group of people that all were going off of the same study guide and brainstorming and doing things like that. But once I took the test, then you have to, you get notified, you do a physical agility test, and they will tell you beforehand, again, where the test is going to be held, what time you need to be there, and what to expect during the test. Now, the written part of what I received said that there's going to be a rope climb, and you have to climb X amount of feet up the rope, no problem. In actuality, they had eliminated the rope climb, and they had a ladder propped up against the wall, and you had to go up. I think you started on the underside of the ladder, went up so many steps or rungs, transferred over to the correct side of the ladder, went up to the top of the ladder, touched the wall, came back down, transferred back over to the underside, and went down to the ground again. I'm pretty sure that's what it was. We had one person in our group of 5 that decided there was no way in heck they were going to be able to climb the rope, so they blew off the test and didn't even bother showing up. In actuality, that was replaced by the ladder test. So it's a guide, it's kind of a heads up to this is what we're going to want you to do, but it doesn't necessarily mean that that's what's going to be there. Go and take the test. If you pass the written test, do the physical agility test. Some of the things that they wanted me to do on the test that I actually got hired on was running. I think they had you pick up weights. You had to go up a couple flights of stairs, turn around, carry the weights back down the flight of stairs, and if you finished it before the allotted time, you had to stand there holding the weights until your time was up. They made a dummy. I think it was 150, 175 pounds that they basically took fire hoses and wired them together and put a jacket on them, and you had to maneuver the dummy through from point A to point B or something like that. They had a obstacle course set up where you had to jump over walls, run through some things, go under things. It wasn't that difficult. Your big thing there was get it done in the allotted time. And I think it was all pass-fail. You did sit-ups, you did push-ups, you had to do so many in a certain amount of time. And that was the extent of the physical agility that I took. Now, some of the other tests that I did physical agility tests on, you had to get in a cruiser and somebody pushed it X amount of feet in a certain amount of time, and then when they were done, you got out, they got in, and then you had to push the cruiser back. And again, it was timed and it was pass-fail. But the physical agility tests, they're not that difficult to do. If you're in shape and you should have it. It shouldn't be that big of a deal. Once you pass the physical agility test, you're going to go in for a physical examination from a doctor. And they're going to do an eye exam, hearing test, and the physical. And the doctor's going to send a recommendation off to, I don't know if it's a civil service commission or if it's the chief of police, but somebody eventually gets a report that says, in his opinion, yes, you're either fit for being in law enforcement or they have concerns, and those are all things that can be addressed, and hopefully you get through that okay. I'm going off a list, so I want to do it in the right chronological order. Once I passed those and did the eye exam and the hearing and the physical thing, you go into, I think I went into the police department at this phase for the lie detector test. And that ended up taking, I'm going to guess maybe an hour and a half. There's a couple breaks in between, and it takes a while to have them hook everything up. Some departments will do, I think, voice analysis, but in my case it was the lie detector test. Got through that, and then they sent me off for a psychological examination, see a psychiatrist. And that was kind of extensive. That was deemed that I was okay to be a police officer. And the last phase of the hiring process that I went through was a sit-down interview with, at the time, the chief, the captain, and I think there was a lieutenant that was present. And you go into the chief's office, and it was interesting because I sat down and I was pretty confident, and they said, "Are you ready?" And I said, "I'm ready." And they reached over and hit record on a tape recorder, and I kind of spazzed. I don't know why. But I got through the interview process okay. And it was Halloween of 1991 when I was actually at work. I got a phone call from the chief secretary that said that I had been hired, but there was going to be a gap between being told on that day that I was hired and actually going to work, because I had to go to the police academy, which was in Columbus, Ohio. I was in a city near Cleveland, and their academy wasn't going to be starting up with a new class until I think January 7th, 6th or 7th. So I had a couple months in between that I could kind of get prepared. Once they told me, I went in, they gave me an information packet. There were certain types of things that I needed to buy. I think I ended up going to JCPenney's. They tell you what you need and they tell you where you can go get it at the best prices. So I had everything that I needed, and there was also a heads up because there's quite an extensive PT, physical training program that they have. So I was able to prepare for that. I started doing long walks and running and jogging and stretching and doing things like that. So I had a little bit of a head start on that phase, which was kind of nice. The academy that I went to, it was the Ohio State Highway Patrol Police Academy, and I think it was 14 weeks. I could be wrong. Somewhere in or around there. We started in early January and we finished, I think, the first week or so of April. So, Rain Man without the math skills, that might be more like, 12 or 14 weeks, somewhere in that area. And it's been changed probably numerous times since then because they've added a bunch of things to meet the necessary requirements for hours of training. And it could vary department to department or state to state, but at that time, that's what we had. Was given heads up on, again, the PT things and also things that they're going to be looking for, because when you go to the police academy, you basically learn how to do things their way. And that's what you gear towards and what you're training towards and what you get kind of used to after a while. It was three physical agility testing periods, one when you first got there so they could do an evaluation on where you're at with regards to what they're going to expect. When you were about halfway through the program, they did another one to hopefully compare to your first one to see that you were making improvements with your times and your sit-ups and push-ups and all the things that they require you to do. And then there's one at the end that you have to do in order to pass, because they're going to look at your academic grade point average, so to speak. They're going to look at your driving ability, they're going to look at your firearms proficiency, and they're going to look at your physical training before they go ahead and have the state certify you eligible to be a police officer. Hi, Ming.
Hi, babe. I'm gonna come say hi.
Yeah,
Hi, guys.
it's the Ming. Bye, Ming.
Bye, babe.
So once I graduated from the police academy, you go back to your department, and they have a field training program. Once you're involved with the field training program, you're going to be assigned a field training officer. He's going to look after you for the first month that you're there. You do as he tells you to do, not necessarily as he does. One of the examples was I eventually became a field training officer. The thing about do as I say, not as I do, when I was a field training officer years into employment, a person told me that I called them a liar. And I was training someone at the time. I was probably in 8-9 years on the job, and I was training somebody. And I got called in by a supervisor and said that there was a complaint received that I called somebody a liar. And I said, yep, absolutely sure did. Number one, you always want to be honest. And if you did something and they ask you, did you do it? Just tell them, yeah, I did it. And they said, well, you shouldn't have done that. And I said, well, I knew they were lying. And they said, well, you should have said that I'm having a hard time believing what you're telling me is the truth. Yeah, okay. So I told the person that I was training in their position with their amount of time on the job, if someone lies to you, don't do what I did. Tell them I'm having a hard time believing what you're telling me is the truth. And when it comes to non-training, and someone comes to me after 9 or 10 years on the job and they lie to me, I'm just going to flat out tell them that, yeah, you're lying to me. But that's, I digress. I had an FTO for a month, then I changed to a different field training officer for month number 2 and another one for month number 3. And the idea with that is not every patrolman's going to do the same thing the same way, and you may have a hard time following what maybe one of them is doing or how they're doing it. And then you may see it repeated down the line, and they may be doing it in a way that you understand better and you're more comfortable with that way. But they mix it up between 3 patrolmen that have time on the road and know what they're doing. And then once you're done with that 3-month period, then you go back to your first field training officer for 2 weeks, and they're going to be looking to see how much interaction they have to have while you're doing things. Do they have to get involved, or are you handling everything on your own? And again, they're looking for improvement. So if they see that, they can cut you loose early. If you're having issues with certain things, they can extend it a little while longer. But for the most part, you should be able to get through that okay. And once you're done with that, then you're on your own, which can be either kind of scary at times, or it can be, oh, thank goodness, I'm finally away from having somebody with me all the time. That was pretty much my experience from finding out that they were going to hire, going to get the application, turning the application in, getting the study guide, and finding out when I had to take the written exam, taking the written exam, going to the physical agility, going to the doctor, going to the psychiatrist, going to the lie detector testing, and finally the final interview before going off to the academy. So that was my journey on how I got hired. If somebody has a journey that is more extensive or maybe less extensive, let me know down below. If you're interested in becoming law enforcement, just check word of mouth, check the advertising, talk to people, and get a feel for who's going to be hiring. The city that hired me, I think at the time, was doing a 2-year testing. They would announce the test, they would give the test, and those results, once they were completed, would be held for 2 years. So if they were going to hire 2 or 3 people, then that's what they would do. But then for the remainder of the year and a half, they would hire off that list if there were any openings. If not, that list after 2 years would be voided, and they would start the process all over again. So you can find out when the schedule is for an upcoming test. It might be in a week, it could be in a year and a half. It just depends on when or how often they test and what their civil service guidelines are. For me, it was a civil service job. I think they all are. Smaller municipalities, townships, I don't know. They may be different. I think that's it for my journey. Hopefully that's going to give some insight into what I needed to do. Unfortunately, because of the amount of time, I can't say that it's etched in stone and it's still that way, but it's probably pretty close. If you have any questions or comments, please down below. If you liked it, thumbs up. If you didn't like it, comment down below. Let me know why. And I think the other question related to my law enforcement experience is doing some of the stories. I have to see where I can go with that with regards to what I can talk about and what I can't talk about. And I'll come up with a list of stuff and maybe some do's and don'ts. So if you're interested in that type of thing, again, let me know down below. So thanks for your time. Thanks for watching. Sorry I was late. Be safe. Have fun. Bye.